All right, we're going to round out the 2024 postseason video coverage by looking at some individual players and kind of determining where they fit versus our expectations on the season. I'm going to go back and pull up a tier list that I created going into the 2024 season, kind of projecting what I thought we would get from certain players, or maybe certain players that need to show us that next gear in their game. And the results are in. I was wrong about a shit ton of things. So I'm going to recategorize all these players. Maybe some stay, maybe some move up or down. And then I invite you guys to do the same. Post it on X, tag me on it. I'll put the link to the tier list in the description below. Yeah, man, it's a weird exercise because I think some of these are very obvious. Some are kind of hard to say. Some guys got hurt. Some guys transferred. We're going to do our best here. And keep in mind, this tier list will be a postseason, not a preseason next year prediction. So, for instance, I think a player might enter the prove it category right now saying we need further context on this player. They need to show that next level to their game. But when I project preseason next year, if I feel confidently about a player progressing, let's say a Dalton Brooks right now has a lot to prove, well, maybe I predict he'll be an elite player next year, so I throw him up into elite in the preseason version next year. But as of now, we're going to leave things how they were by the end of the 2024 season. Thanks for being here. It'll be a little longer video. We're going to go through a bunch of players, but I think it'll be a good reflection on how each individual did relative to expectations. So maybe a 30-minute video or so. So don't feel free to watch this one in a couple of separate chunks and pause and continue it later. But thanks again for being here. Let's start at the bottom. Obviously, no one's going to end in this newcomer / potential breakdown category. They're going to all have to be sorted out into the more tangible categories, but the rest of them are prove it, players need to show that next gear, players that didn't show us enough previously to call them a consistent producer or even an elite player, and these are pretty self-explanatory. Consistent producer are just players you're okay, happy having on the field, give you plus play now and then, don't mess things up for you. Elite are the best of the best. These are players that probably have pro potential, players that could go pro that given season, players that you're, obviously building game plans around. And then MVP / superstar are going to be the best of that elite category. And my strict rule in this category is that I can only put 2 players per side of the field in this category. So we had 2 defensive players, and I only deemed 1 player worthy to be in this category preseason. We're going to have to move some things around. We'll put it that way. Let's start at the bottom. Cyrus Allen still has a lot to prove. Had to transfer out. Obviously, I think they're looking to upgrade this receiver room. He transferred out pretty early, and you wish him the best. Couple of good moments here. The highlight was against Florida, the long play-action touchdown. Good luck, Cyrus Allen. Damian Sanford's an interesting one, and because of playing time and reps, I think he's largely in the prove-it category. We got some good from Sanford. We had some young moments from Sanford. Great athlete, great guy to have in the linebacker room. He's probably going to be the 3rd guy in the rotation next year because you got Scooby and Torian back. I think he can potentially move up to this within his linebacker role. He can be a consistent producer, that consistent 3rd linebacker off the bench, and then even more upside in years to come. I know he had some bad moments in the bowl game, but this is a young dude in his first college action this year. The best is yet to come, but he does have to show it. This is Rylan Kennedy. And he was in that potential breakout category because we heard all through fall camp how he's going to play, he's going to be a factor in the season. And he was kind of that second edge guy off the bench behind Cassius Howell. And though he did have some good moments and his body has totally transformed since he got on campus, I think he was in a very small role last year. That role will really grow this next year after losing what you lost on D-line. And he has to prove it, but another guy I'm pretty confident at least moves up to that consistent producer next year. In fact, I might project that in the preseason. But for now, he ends it still having to show that next level. I'll say the same thing for Theo Mellenordstrom. And this is an interesting one because he did play a lot this year, unlike these other 2 guys who were kind of put in here ready to move up. And now Theo does have a chance to move up, but we saw some inconsistency blocking. I think there's definitely a willingness to be a blocker, a good quality blocker, but sometimes footwork, went down the drain. Sometimes technique, consistency, overall blocking wasn't there. And he had that one big drop versus Auburn. But, it's the Theo show next year. I know you bring in a lot of tight ends. I would be surprised if Theo Mellenordstrom's not your tight end 1 next season. So he has that blank canvas to really show us what he can be, fully transitioning into American football, fully transitioning into that tight end position, which he didn't play in Sweden. He was a receiver over there. So, you know, this is the senior year. This is the big year for Theo. Let's see what he can do. Moving up to the prove it category. DJ Hicks. You know, this was a guy who kind of plateaued a little bit early in his college trajectory, a little bit in his early college career. Late 2023, he got some reps. I thought he had a lot to prove based off of that. The first 3-4 games or so of the year this year, I don't think he showed that jump. By the LSU game, I think we got a bump from DJ Hicks. And right now, I would put him in the border between consistent producer and prove it. And he's going to have to prove it next year because he's a starting DT for Texas A&M. Let's see that 5-star talent come to fruition. I'm going to put him at the top of the prove it category because I think of all these guys, he has the clearest route to jump next season. And he's the highest rated guy coming out of high school of this bunch as well. So I'll put him at the top of our new prove it category. This is the end of the old one. This is the start of the new one. GBD, man, unfortunately didn't work out here. Has to prove it elsewhere. Yeah, man, South Carolina for him. Jaden Hill, he went pro out of eligibility. He had his busting coverage at the nickel position. Had a couple of good moments, you know, defending the run, inside, physicality stuff was decent. But he's going to have to find a way to prove that he's an NFL player, whether it's on a practice squad and working his way up, whether it's through this draft process. Good luck to Jaden Hill. Scooby Williams was an interesting one coming in because, you know, he had all the athleticism and size you would want in a linebacker coming from Florida, but he came with a bunch of mistakes, misfits, inconsistencies at the position, and he wasn't perfectly consistent at A&M, but consistent enough for me to put him into the consistent producer category with an outside chance to bump up to elite next season. But he's obviously a guy we're happy to have back. I think he's a guy that took major strides on his college career this season at A&M, reuniting with Jay Bateman, and it worked out for him. You know, it wasn't always perfect, but I think more often than not, Scooby made good choices at linebacker this year. And we're really happy to have him back for that last season. Janae Walker, you know, it's hard to rate A&M receivers on a list like this. They weren't the best. I don't think they were necessarily as bad as their final stat line on the season would indicate because I think there was a learning curve with quarterback or, you know, a regression with the starting quarterback in Connor, learning the year one system under Colin Klein. I don't know if receivers got the absolute fairest shake this year, but relative to what A&M had, I think Jade was a consistent producer. I think we can put him there and feel confident about that. We're also grateful for him being just a great Aggie and a great leader for the team, a great, you know, intangibles guy. I'd just be balling, really. Le'Veon Moss, man. Should we move up to consistent producer? Should he be elite? No. Le'Veon Moss is a damn superstar. Maybe the best player on A&M this year, like as a singular force, a player that can define a scheme, a player you can build around. That's Le'Veon Moss, man. And what Le'Veon had before the season that had him in that prove it category was strength, toughness, balance, contact willingness. But this year, he added patience and vision and acceleration and pacing to his game. Major credit to Trooper Taylor there. But Le'Veon Moss is obviously a player that we are more than thrilled to have back next season. Let's look out for that spring update on his injury. I'm sure we'll get a bunch of updates come spring ball. But yeah, Le'Veon Moss, you just be balling, man. We really appreciate you for doing so. Man, what happened to Moose? We'll never know. It was obviously off-field stuff, practice stuff, training stuff, meeting stuff, that level of being a football player that I think failed him. And through 2 coaching staffs, he couldn't see the field. He'll go pro. Hopefully he can find a way, man. And I'm not here to get into a big exercise about what happened to Moose Muhammad. We can only assume he just didn't earn the right to play in practice. That's all we can really, that's the safest assumption to make right now based on the evidence and based on what Elko has hinted at. Tyreek Chappelle was playing at an elite level to start the year at nickel. Moved to nickel this year under Mike Elko, and it was a hand-in-glove fit. Major compliments coming out of fall camp. Looked really good in his first couple of games. But because the season fell so short due to injury for Chappelle, I have to put him at the top of this prove it category. I'll put him even above DJ Hicks because I think if he comes back, he's healthy, he can play nickel day one, he will be at least a consistent producer for A&M's defense. You really missed him down the stretch of the year. You really missed him, especially when Will Lee wasn't available for the bowl game. You felt the absence of both of those guys that compounded in that game. Really, really highlighted your weaknesses. But man, he's poised to jump up, and very happy to get him back. Same thing we're saying about Le'Veon Moss. It's a big deal to get Tyreek Chappelle back at nickel next year, guys. Cam Dewberry transferring to Bama. Injury stuff, I think, really halted his development. Unfortunate, series of events for his career. Was a backup at A&M this year. Got some playing time due to injuries. Had his share of mistakes. He has a lot to prove on his career, but obviously, if I'm Bama, I'm happy to get a guy like Cam Dewberry because he did show a really, really good trajectory his freshman year, and just battled injuries, battled coaching stuff, and we wish him the best. I mean, move on, do your thing, whatever. Mark Naboo, you still have to prove it, but you were looking pretty promising, man. Half a game, hard to say. We'll put him towards the top of the prove it category. Hopefully, he's ready to go next year. ACLs are a big deal, and that brings us the completion of the prove it category. So that's the new list. These are all players who need to prove it, but we might have to add more because I think there are some players in this top section that have to go down, unfortunately. Let's do the consistent producer line. Amari Daniels, I think he stays here. If he's not your lead back and he's in a rotational role at running back, I think he's a quality, rotational, good back to have in your room. So I'm going to put him in the consistent producer. You get him, you get Le'Veon, you get Ruben back, and that's actually going to elevate Amari's value next year. So, yeah, as a lead back in the SEC versus the teams you played late in the year like Texas, you're just not going to get that level of productivity that you would if you were in a tandem. So we'll leave him here. Y'all have to tell me if that's fair or not. Maybe y'all aren't as high on him as I am, but I think Amari's a great guy to have in the stable. Albert Regis absolutely stays in that consistent producer role, man. Maybe the most consistent starter in his role this year. Maybe didn't have the big ups, but definitely didn't have the big downs. Definitely not a big mistake maker. And you're asking a guy that's about 305, 310 to play true nose in the SEC. I think he's a 3-tech. I think he has really good footwork and good speed for his size. I think he's very much in that 3-tech mold. But he was quality. Just a good motor on the guy, good leadership from the guy, made his individual plays. Just not a great, occupier of bodies because he is a little undersized for nose, and it's not his fault that he's playing that. Consistent producer, confidently can put him there. Thank you, Albert Regis. Glad to have you back, man. Armajé Reed-Adams, pretty close to elite at right guard, but not quite. I'm going to put him at the top of the consistent producer category. Could have gone pro this year, been a fringe draft guy. Great to have him back. I think there were a couple of just assignment mistakes, and that could be just jumping into a new system, being at Kansas for so long and learning that. Man, we're going to be happy to have this guy back next year. He's going to bring the chair and beat some asses with it. Dalton Brooks, I've talked about it. You know my feelings about Dalton Brooks. I think he has elite to superstar potential. The instincts and the athleticism and the size for a safety is all there. We saw his share of mistakes towards the end of the year, as we did from the entire secondary, breaking down in zone coverage, making mistakes, not playing as a connected secondary at times, and he was a culprit. But he was really good in the running game. And I think we really missed him in those first few games where he was out with targeting. He had a string of targeting to start the year. And when he came back, there was a tangible difference in A&M's outside run contain and tackling passes in the flats because he has great instincts and he has great acceleration. So this might be, a bit of a hotter take. I'm going to put him in the consistent producer category. I'm going to put him right here next to Scooby. And if I'm projecting next season, this is a guy I would consider putting into the elite because I really, really have high expectations for Dalton Brooks, not to overhype a kid. But if I'm being real with you guys, that's how I feel about Dalton. I'm going to leave him in the consistent producer. Argue with the comment section. Argue with the wall. No, I'm just kidding. I'll respond to you if it's good. All right. Josh Salazar has to prove it. He bet on himself coming here. He knew he would be buried in this depth chart. He took a chance. He came in as a walk-on. I'm sure he was taken care of via NIL. And he's going to move on to South Florida. Good luck, Josh Salazar. I was wrong. I thought he was going to be a kind of guy that could come in off the bench, but he couldn't make it happen. Best of luck to the young man. Rodas Johnson, absolutely a consistent producer this year. And kind of the buzz phrase I've been using this offseason about talent acquisition on A&M's defensive line. Obviously, we're looking at building up that rotation, especially on the interior, and it's looking kind of thin right now. If you could add a couple of Rodas Johnsons to the room right now, you'd be really good shape. Because he was a quality defensive tackle off the bench. And not all bench defensive tackles are quality these days because a lot of them move on to where they can start. It's a hot commodity in the portal. So he was a godsend for the team. There wasn't a huge drop-off when he was on the field. In fact, at times when the starters weren't cutting it, when players were having down moments, he gave us a boost off the bench. So Rodas Johnson, man, great one-year stint in Aggie Land. Wish he had more eligibility. Javen Thomas obviously still has quite a bit to prove. I'm going to move him towards the top of this prove it list. I think I need to move Cyrus down to the bottom. Towards the top of the prove it list, maybe behind a Sanford, maybe behind here. Somewhere right in here with Theo. Got his fair share of reps as that third corner in the room. Credit to him to, maintaining his right to be a rotational player despite the influx of talent you had at DB last year. But obviously still a learning curve for the young man. Obviously has the size and the speed you would love to have at DB, but got beat a few times. Just, technical stuff isn't clicking just yet for Javen Thomas. But I'm not, without hope for Javen. I think he can make a leap next year, just like you could say about Des Ricks. Solomon DeShields was absolutely a consistent producer in his role. I thought he was a great third or fourth linebacker off the bench. Not a guy you kind of felt the weight of when he was on the field, like, oh no, this guy's in, we got to be careful, we got to win these reps. No, there wasn't a huge drop-off when he played. So I absolutely stick him in the consistent producer category. I think I'll put him somewhere, maybe right behind Amari. Quality player off the bench. Thank you for your 1 year, Solomon DeShields. I don't think he has eligibility. And this is another one I'm really excited to talk about. Will Lee came in, a lot of hype, a lot of buzz. He only had 1 year at Kansas State after moving up from JUCO, and this guy's a riser. Damn near elite. In fact, I'll put him in elite. I thought Will Lee was maybe our most consistent or maybe our best defensive player on the season. He got beat a couple of times, and if you're the top corner on an SEC team, you're going to go up against top SEC receivers, and that's going to happen. But think about the drop-off when he didn't play, man. And think about some of the games he had against maybe Missouri, against maybe LSU at times. You got beat a couple times, but I don't think they were mostly due to Will Lee. Will Lee was a really, really quality corner, and you get him back this year. You got a couple of really good decisions go your way in terms of players that could have gone pro, and Will Lee is one of them. And, this is there for Will Lee. In fact, let's see what I do when I get up here. Maybe we'll move him up for the year. I don't know if he was superstar level. He was damn good. Will Lee, elite. Chase Basantis, definitely a consistent producer. Was he elite? Think about how his absence felt. And it wasn't, an isolated sample, though, because you also lost Le'Veon Moss around the same time. But that compound effect destroyed our running game. He was our best interior blocker. I'm doing this in real time. I didn't prepare any notes. I'm putting Basantis in elite, man. It's a really good offensive lineman, really good run blocker. The big issue that Basantis had this year was he had a couple of penalties. But outside of that, great pass pro, great push. That's an elite offensive lineman. And I think you have two of them because Trey Zune, great pass protector. It broke down a couple times on the year. I think this is here for either of these guys. I think these are two just anchors on your O-line. And, I think even a guy like Armage could be up here too, which is reason for optimism on the offense next year is getting them and your running backs back and revamping the receiver room and getting year 2 of Marcel Reed. Lots of reasons for offensive optimism next year. So I took a gamble on Terry Bussey. I thought he'd be a consistent producer. Obviously, incoming freshman, all the hype in the world, versatile guy, played quarterback in high school, but could have played pretty much any position they wanted him to play, even center. I'm just kidding. But does he still have more to prove? I think so. And I'll put him at the tippity top of this list. I think he proved his versatility because he came in as a DB. 1 week into camp, they're like, oh no, Ruben went down. We need you to play receiver and do a lot of things for us offensively as a true freshman. Can you handle that? And he did. He did a lot of things, and as the season went on, we saw his role expand. But I think the consistency will come around next year when he's called upon even more, and even more so now that the receiver room has dwindled down. He's the senior most receiver in that room in terms of A&M experience. So next year he'll be back in this category with this upside. But I think he needs to prove he can be that guy. I don't think I'm ready just to give him that consistent producer because I think we expect a lot of things from Terry Bussey. So be fun. It'll be fun to see what they do with him next year. All right, that gets us through these 2 categories. Let's have some fun at the tippity top. Now this might have been the most negative mover on this list this year, unfortunately. The move from nickel to safety for whatever reason caused a lot of hardship for Bryce Anderson, and he was probably the #1 culprit of the safety mistakes we saw this year. But I'm holding out hope. I'm not throwing Bryce Anderson back. We saw what the flashes he showed at nickel as a freshman and sophomore. And, I mean, this is a testament to our hopes and at least my expectations for the guy. I had him at elite going into the year last year at the top of the list, but it didn't work out. So, Bryce, you got quite a bit to prove, my man, and you're going to have opportunity to do so next year. Maybe year 2 in Elko's system. Maybe year 2 of moving back to safety for the first time since high school. We'll do it for Bryce. But unfortunately, he's a big faller on this list, and I don't think anybody, even Bryce, would argue that. But I think it lights a fire underneath him. Hopefully, it's an amazing offseason of work for Bryce Anderson. Are you guys done with Bryce? I'm not throwing him back. Like, we saw the glimpses his first couple of years. It just didn't work out this year, man. A lot of factors working against him, and it didn't happen. Cassius Howell, man, within his role as the backup edge rusher, the go-to third down guy, was he elite? I think it's border between consistent producer and elite, just like Armage. I'm going to put him at the tippy top of consistent producer. I think what we got, the best attribute about Cassius Howell this year was his just willingness to be involved with so many plays and his never say die attitude playing football, just chasing quarterbacks, putting quarterbacks on the clock in plays where he was seemingly out of the play, just going all out sprint, chasing plays, angling plays. That was great. But now he has a chance to definitely become this or this next year. He's the starting edge at A&M, senior year, a lot of talent, a lot of want to. Very excited for Cassius Howell. I only move him down. Oh man, elite is a very, very kind of pristine and just high level descriptor. So I'm just not going to put him there just yet, but he absolutely has a chance to be there next season. I don't think Shamar Stewart was elite this year. I think he has an elite body. He absolutely has elite upside and elite potential, and that's why he's going pro. He was towards the bottom of the consistent producers. I think I would put him, maybe not towards the bottom, mid-tier consistent producer within his role as a starter and expected star for A&M. I'll put him kind of right around here. He was that so close, yes, 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 no, didn't happen. That we saw from him so much in 2023, getting close to sacks, getting close to tackles for losses, then having one crazy play every few weeks, and it was kind of the same this year. There wasn't that jump. But, I mean, what NFL roster doesn't want this guy on his team? Obviously, I mean, also a great attitude, just a great mindset on this kid that we get from his interviews. Yeah, man, I think that path is still very much paved ahead of him. Wish him the best. Obviously, wish him the very best. I don't think Torian was elite this year. But he was a really good player. Really cerebral player, extension of the coaching staff. I'll put him towards the top of this consistent producer category. And he was elite in that aspect of his game, but I think a lot of his shortcomings last year were masked by Edgerrin Cooper, who just covers so much ground on the football field with his athleticism and instincts. And obviously Torian is just a little bit limited in those, in at least the athleticism regard, just being a smaller linebacker, a stockier linebacker. And he's going to develop, he's going to put on strength, he's going to, marginally add speed, but the instincts, they have to be absolutely locked in for a player like him to be at his best. And I think there was a little bit of a ramp up this year where we saw an adjustment period. And I think Torian had some of his better moments later in the year. But overall, I don't think we got the elite that we kind of were hoping for from Torian. It makes a lot of sense why you didn't. But by the end of the year, he was playing a lot better. Him and Scooby obviously gained some chemistry, gained some trust. And I think both of these guys could potentially be up at elite next year. And that was, maybe something I should have thought through more going into the year. The absence of a now NFL star in Edgerrin Cooper, obviously having a detrimental effect to his running mate. I think Noah was a consistent producer. I know some of us are pretty mad at Noah and the decision he made, and I think it's okay to be upset at Noah for making his decision as, receiver one at A&M, the top guy. You're not searching for playing time. You're not searching for more opportunity. You're not taking a big systematic leap going to Georgia. I understand that. But I'll try to be objective here. I think he was maybe a tick above Jade. Maybe a couple ticks above Jade. Whatever, we'll say. Yeah, whatever. I think Noah was good. Noah's a good receiver, and he definitely would have been heavily utilized next year, but I'll save the words about him. Unfortunately, he's not here. And these three lists are done. Do these guys remain? Obviously, Connor doesn't, man. This This right here, what I'm about to do, is probably the main reason for all of A&M's offensive shortcomings this year. There are a lot of reasons, and I don't think it was by a significant margin. There are other issues too. I think learning the year one system and Colin Klein, learning his personnel and his go-tos and moments in games were also a big factor for the late season offensive shortcomings, the post-Le'Veon Moss offensive shortcomings. But Connor Wigman just not hitting on what we thought he would by a wide margin obviously tanked A&M's offensive upside on the year. And going into the year, Connor was the offensive ceiling. And I even used that phraseology going into the year. I said, there are some pieces on A&M's offense. We have O-line questions. We have receiver questions. But everything will go if we get the best out of Connor Wigman. He was that catalyst. He was the glue and the head of the spear. He was everything. And it just didn't work out. You can blame lingering effects from injuries. You can blame the new injury. You can blame him just regressing and not progressing through the offseason. You can blame it being a bad fit with the coaching staff. You can blame the coaching staff for failing Connor. Whatever the reason was, you fell short. And that's just such a big reason for all of A&M's shortcomings this year. Not just because it's Connor. Because when your quarterback doesn't work out, obviously the most important position in football, I mean, I don't have to tell you that. I don't even have to say that. When your quarterback doesn't work out and you don't have a ready-made veteran backup to come in and take over, that's going to screw you over. Especially when you're in a year one system and Connor's been working year ones through spring and fall and you've been installing with Connor. That's obviously going to hurt your chances. And you wish him the best. He landed at U of H. Easy place to root for him and wish him the best at. I mean, obviously, he could have gone to Auburn. We would have not liked that. But good luck, Connor. Didn't work out here. Oh, does Scorton stay up here? He was through like the first 8 games, but he wasn't as consistent as we had hoped, man. We got all the hype. He had the highs. It was the LSU game, Missouri game, Arkansas game. But outside of those 3 games, we did not get a consistent burn from Nick Scorton. And because of that, I'm going to drop him down to elite. I don't think he reached superstar status this year. And you can say the same damn thing for Shamar Turner. But these guys are probably going to be great pros. These are great players for whatever reason at A&M. The last 4 games of the year, they kind of just weren't themselves. I don't know what happened. I don't know why it happened. Maybe it was incorrect schematic usage of them, maybe too much stunting, maybe too many slants, maybe not just trusting these guys straight up. And that's a great gripe. You have a great argument there, and maybe that's why. But for the last 4 games, the D-line missed tackles, got blocked, did not displace bodies. I don't know what happened there. But if they maintained that status quo they established through LSU, they would have stayed here. They were good enough, but it didn't happen. But they were certainly still elite. They certainly still have great NFL potential, and I think we'll still wish these guys the best. But guys, that is the tier list. That's what I came up with postseason. It changed quite a bit. Rewind to the beginning of the video to compare it to the list now. Le'Veon Moss, man, you're the biggest riser, and unfortunately, Connor Wigman was the biggest faller. But hey, you get one of those 2 back, and hopefully Marcel Reed can rise to the top of the list next year. I'll make this again going into the 2025 season, sometime during fall camp. And again, that's going to conclude my immediate postseason reaction stuff for the 2024 season. We'll talk about it the whole offseason through other shows, through the call-in show. But this is it for my kind of calculated postseason stuff. Wanted to go through some of the main players on the team. So tell me if you agree. Make this tier list if you want. I'll put the link in the description so you can make it. Tag me with it on X if you do so. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Gig 'em.